Welcome to the Impact of AI Explored podcast, hosted by James O'Regan and Gerjon. Created by and for IT professionals, we focus on how AI reshapes our daily work. With AI insights growing every day, we cut through the noise to deliver what matters most. Join us as we explore the latest breakthroughs, share best practices, and empower you to make the most of AI in your career.
Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Impact of AI Explored. We have a great guest this month. We have Leon McQuade from ThinkCloud. Welcome to the podcast, Leon. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Hi James. Is it Gerjon or Gerwin?
Gerjon, but
Gerjon,
I listen to
Gerjon,
everything
sorry.
because it's no worries.
No, I thought I'd better get it right. But no, great to be on here. Background is I'm Chief AI Officer for a company called ThinkCloud. I'm a co-founder of it with my business partner, Scott Clark, over in the UK. And we look after a wide variety of different clients who outsource their IT and cybersecurity to us, with AI just being one of the latest tools and latest buzzwords that everyone's talking about.
Nice.
Yeah, that makes sense. So today we wanted to talk about something that you mentioned to us, Leon, was the World Economic Forum report on skills for 2030, which I looked at, and some ways it's a little bit scary. In some of it, it's interesting to see that kind of some of the softer skills are really where things lie. So maybe you can outline some of the findings of the report.
Yeah, I think when you look at the sort of top 10 skills, I think what strikes me, what's apparent is creativity and analytical thinking. It's saying as humans that they're the top two skills that we need. When we start talking about AI, obviously AI can help people who are creative be analytical, and it can help people who are analytical be creative, right? But I found it quite striking that they were saying in that Future Jobs report, and I think when I first read it, I think it got in 2020, 2021, something like that, I think. But it was for 2023 and 2027 of what we should be predicting. And it's a report I've always looked at and studied. I don't know about yourself, James, and that where we want to be looking forward to seeing what jobs we need to be recruiting in our own business, we need to be looking at them sort of top 10 skills. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, no, that does make sense.
Yep.
I think that obviously, I suppose things are evolving when it comes to jobs and skill sets. Can you outline some of those kind of skills that it mentions?
Yeah, so the top two are creativity and analytical thinking, and then the top 10, I'm going to paraphrase them because I might get them in the wrong order because I haven't got my notes in front of me. But I think it then goes on to adaptability and resilience, and it links into that area there. And then I think another one is motivation and self-awareness. And I think when you look at that and resilience, in a world where everything is changing, jobs that I'm 43, so I'm sure you boys are a little bit younger than me. But
no, I'm older.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting is I started out as an actual carpenter, a joiner, craftsman. That's the trading industry I started out in, and then I went on to lead a global construction business and worked my way through leadership. Now, over them 20 years, technology's always been a massive fundamental part of them businesses. I was talking only on stage last week at Edgbaston Cricket Ground and talking about that wave, because everybody's an AI expert at the moment. And what I say is I'm not an AI expert. I'm just a leader who helps other people figure things out. And the current problem we're challenged is AI. It's nothing new. It's machine learning. It's deep learning. And I think what is really challenging in the talks that I do when I get people to stand up, and sort of first questions is, have you Googled yourself or your business in the last 12 months? If you haven't, sit down. Second question, are you on LinkedIn? If not, sit down. Third question, have you used ChatGPT? If not, sit down. Fourth question, do you secure all of your personal and professional social media accounts with two-factor FA? If not, sit down. Then ask another question, who in the room use a paid version of ChatGPT, just for example? Sit down. And then the third one is, have you bought some Bitcoin or cryptocurrency? And the reason I asked them questions, and I've been using them similar questions since ChatGPT came out, basically. And before that, it wasn't ChatGPT, it was another tool. But my talk still hasn't changed, is, are you digitally curious? And I think curiosity and lifelong learning, I think it's number 5 or 6 within the top 10 skills. And I sat there on this panel last week listening to all these people say, AI can't do this, AI can't do that. And there were so many AI experts on there, and I purposely chose not to sit on the panel. Because when I speak, I like to take notes and find out what the problems are in the room. And categorically, they was wrong what they were saying. Because what I did at the back of the room was, I went and used a product called Gerjon. You'll have heard of Gerjon. Nothing new. It's a video tool. I got a script put up, and I asked them to give me a problem about something I shouldn't know. And I set some custom agents, which we use within Copilot ourselves, and we've got some custom large language models. And it went away and did a big piece of research for me while the conference was on. And then spat me out a 1-minute video when I went on stage of me stood outside the cricket ground, educating the audience on something I had no awareness of, what they were saying couldn't be done. And I think the challenge we have with that is people don't invest traditionally in technology. Over 80% of digital technology transformation projects fails because we don't focus on the people or the process, because it's never a technology problem. It's always a people and a process problem. And I think when we start talking about AI, I think skill number 6 or 7 is technical literacy, technology literacy. And the organisations I tend to work with are manufacturers, construction, but I'm working a lot in the legal sector and the finance sector. And I think they're either number 2 or number 3 of industries that are just digitally illiterate. So I think when you look at that skill set, and I think the wave of technology, I think the challenge we've got now is knowledge is no longer gate kept like it once used to be. It's now readily accessible, and I think the problem we have is a little bit of knowledge is very dangerous. And I think that becomes a bit of a huge barrier and stumbling block for people. I can see you both nodding. So what's your thoughts when we unpick that?
Yeah, I see the same. I had a discussion with a customer yesterday saying, well, I can create my own app. I don't need you guys anymore. So, okay, you can create it, but can you maintain it? Yeah. What do you mean? I say, well, you can build it, but what if something breaks, or is it secure? Well, I don't know. Okay, that's the little bit of knowledge you have, but you don't know the whole spectrum of the app or what you're trying to build. So it's just the small, yes, you can do this part, but the other part you can't. And that's the little bit of knowledge we have.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have never claimed, Gerjon will know this, I have never claimed to be a coder or anything like that. But I went into Claude and I built a Wi-Fi monitoring app in Claude in a couple of minutes. Now, I haven't. It then gave me the instructions on how to build it in Visual Studio. I haven't got that far with it yet, but it just spat out all the code. Now, I have no idea if that code is right, what it does, where it outputs it to. This whole vibe coding thing is, I think one of the descriptions I saw about it was that you need to treat it like a junior programmer. So you need to have guardrails, tell them how to do it, what you expect, and you know, it's not just that anyone can now produce apps. If you don't have the knowledge to back it up, you'll just produce rubbish and unsecure apps and things that break. I know someone who's a really experienced coder, and he's been using it, and he said it actually took him longer to unpick the bad code because it was just rubbish.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge we live in, I got asked a couple of weeks ago on stage, when did I get into AI? And I'm dyslexic, so the challenge I have is I've always used some form of AI. Just a lot of the big tech companies didn't tell us it was AI. I've often been a big fanboy of Google Workspace. I've scaled many businesses using Google Workspace. And there was one of the grounding sort of forefathers of AI. You know, it got developed by DeepMind in Edinburgh University. We all know that story. And, I used to be talking about low-code technology, and low-code technology was just AI, wasn't it, really, at the back of it. And I think what's interesting is it's a great quote by Mustafa Suleyman, if anyone's heard him. He's great, and he talks about, consider that children who grew up travelling by horse and cart and burning wood for heat in the late 19th century. would spend the final days travelling by aeroplane and living in houses warmed by splitting of the atom, right? And when you listen to that quote and you unpick that, and I was on stage saying that, like this the only week, is if you don't understand what the splitting of an atom can do, right, how can you apply it to your business? And I go back to Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was an awful cough syrup and product on it. It was awful, right? No one liked it. And then someone invented refrigeration, didn't they, right? And refrigeration turned Coca-Cola and Pepsi into the behemoths that they are today. AI is what is refrigeration of the year gone past, and I think nobody understands that in its entirety, because what we do in technology is, first and foremost, we're an IT security company. We hack people for a living. That's what we do. And it used to be, prior to COVID, you'd sell IT security package on good, better, best, and some people will always buy the best. Some people go in the middle, and you'd go on a journey. But I don't know about you guys, but we in COVID was really great at getting people online, and amazing for digital adoption. And when I talk about that, I remember my children's great grandmother. She got locked down and no one could see her. She was isolated, but was able to take an iPad round, stick Google Meet on it, and she could meet in with our children, and she could do baking over it. And where humans are amazing, and we are still simple. When we need to survive, we find a way, and we adapt. So if an 80-year-old great grandmother can find a way to use Teams, Meet, Zoom, or whatever it is, they'll find a way. But I think when it comes to technology, there's a great charity that I helped. I was a director, and it's a suicide prevention charity over in the UK called Andy's Man Club. A stat when I first got involved: 1 man every 2 hours tragically takes their own life. So if you stop and think about that, those 3 are the biggest risks to our own life. Yeah. And back 7 years ago, when I first learned about this, tragically my rugby coach took his own life. A guy called Roy Bennett, love him to pieces. And I think the challenge with that is, I'd played rugby with Roy's son, Dave, from being 14, 15 years of age. And we played rugby all up until being 30, and a bit older. And with no word or warning, tragically, Roy went and took his own life. And when you look at that and you look at, mental ill health, the system failed him, because there's all these stats and all these metrics that they're solving this problem. But in that moment, when someone chooses to take their own life, they've got mental ill health in that moment, and people are getting captured. So we looked at that, and we helped set up a charity called Andy's Man Club. A lad called Andy Roberts tragically took his own life, and his mum Elaine and his brother-in-law Luke Ambler set this charity up, and I helped originally go give it technology. But that ended up going on a bit of a journey where I helped set up a club in Hull, my local area. And back then we was told that 1 man every 2 hours takes their own life, and tragically in our region it's over 40% higher than that, right? And what blew my mind was, James, is no one was talking about it. And I was like, wow. And there's stats on it. If you talk about it, you get sensationalised, you get more hotspots, and there's loads of different debate on it. But what we wanted to do with Andy's Man Club, and the metaphor for it is, it's okay to talk. That's what we say. And can we create a safe space for men to come and talk about weakness, burden, or embarrassment? That was it. And could we use technology to engage us? So we use Facebook groups, all the rest of it. But where I'm going with this is, technology is such an enabler, and that charity taught me so much in that, to this day, it doesn't have a product. I resigned from my official position last year, and the reason I resigned was the goal was 4,500 men take their life each year, and we had a goal: what if we could help 5,000 men per week walk through the door? And amazingly, we made that happen. And like in everything, in every business, in every season, working for 7 years in a suicide prevention charity as a sideline, not my full-time job, it takes its toll on you, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So once we achieved that goal, I exited, and that charity goes on strength to strength. Now, as a business, we help businesses scale using Google Workspace or Microsoft, either or. And for me, it more matters when we build a data and AI strategy, where your data sits. The tools are the tools. And why I'm weaving and going back to Andy's Man Club, that was the first charity organisation that we successfully migrated to Google Workspace. Because in COVID, we got locked down and we couldn't open our clubs, and we had to take them clubs online. And everybody wanted to get on board, and everyone wanted to use it. And that charity goes on strength to strength from the technology, because people are invested and they know that they've got a purpose, that on a Monday night when the doors open, they're saving lives, right? We've tried to migrate loads of clients to Google, and they all end up going back to Microsoft in some shape or form because people like familiarity. And I ain't here to say which product's better, because you can build amazing solutions with both solutions, right? But I think what people don't understand, what is coming in this current wave, it comes back down to really basic business process re-engineering. That's all it is. Edward Deming's, nothing new, nothing fancy. What are your business processes? Where did your data sit? What are the digital touch points? How does that look? None of it is complicated. It is very meticulous and quite boring. But I think the challenge that businesses face is we've got to make it safe, because we are going to automate people's jobs. That doesn't mean that they're going to be out of work. It just means that, I believe, for the first time ever, we can get away from our desks and we can start actually adding unique value as only humans do. Because when we go back to that job report, all of a sudden, social influence becomes quite important within the stats. Communication, and there's a whole array of different stats. But I'm just interested. I've just gone off on a bit of a weave there, but unpick that, and come back at me with that.
No, I get what you're saying. So yeah, the human element of it is a major thing. Yes, things are changing, but you still need that human interaction. The things that make us unique as humans will enhance us with AI. It shouldn't be seen as a negative. Yes, there's a lot of flux and change at the moment. We've seen lots of companies, just look at Microsoft. They've just announced 6,000 redundancies, and some of them are due to automation via AI. And it's across the board. I've never actually seen. It's pretty scary, to be honest, because I saw some of the people I actually know. They're really senior technical people who have been at Microsoft and been in our industry for years. There was even people in the AI side of things, which really shocked me that they were let go. So things are changing, but on the flip side, then if you look at a business like Klarna, they implemented AI, and they started getting rid of people. They've now reversed that because they found they needed the people. Yes, they have made the savings and stuff like that, and they've reduced, I think, costs and stuff. But they find, people don't want to talk to an AI. They want to talk to actual human beings. And most people can tell when they're talking to, we all know the tells for when something's written with an AI. There's so many of them. It over-exaggerates. It uses, one I've seen several times is into today's modern pacey world or something like that, something quite over the top. So I think, very much being human is a huge part, and yes, you can utilize AI, but the skills that differentiate us will always be the same, and will always make a difference. Things like, as you said, communication, empathy, these things, being able to socially interact. I think more than things like podcasts, not featuring AIs. God, that which sounds horrific, to be honest, to me. I don't want to listen to AIs talking to each other. I'd rather listen to humans with the human stories, like what you said, like your story about your charity. Those are the types of things people like stories. Everyone likes stories. So, and humans are the only ones with stories. AI makes up stories, but it has to be some grounding in reality. So that's kind of.
Yeah, but if you look back, I've just pulled some notes up. So I have actually got the top 10. So I'll just rattle through them really quick.
Sure.
So
Go for it.
1, analytical thinking. 2, creative thinking. 3, resilience, flexibility, and agility. Number 4, motivation and self-awareness, which I think is huge. Number 5, curiosity and lifelong learning. Number 6, technology skills. But let's just unpack that, right? So only number 6 is about technology. So analytical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, motivation, and curiosity, they're all cognitive skills, engagement skills, and self-efficiency skills. They're not technology skills, right? And I actually think we now communicate through these devices, and I'm dyslexic, so I struggle, to type, right? But when you think about it, we've gone backwards because we're communicating through our thumbs, right? The way we communicate is like we're doing now, and we've had some challenges with getting the Mike's working on this, aren't we? And humans were trying to figure it out. And this podcast might be an absolute failure because, as 3 tech people, we've got some tech problems going on, right? Because technology never behaves the way it should work, right? Because it's complicated. But then when you start digging under there again, so number 6, technology skills. Number 7, dependability and attention to detail, right? I do an exercise. I did it with a member of my team today, a new member of the team. I'm training her on how to do some video editing and take some tasks off me. She's new in marketing. And because we've got all these different agents doing all these different things, all of a sudden we've got time to actually spend doing some deep work and making things better. And I asked her a question. I'll ask you two guys this. How good are you at multitasking?
No. Okay.
I'm not.
James? No. And the
I don't actually believe anyone can multitask.
I completely agree, and I challenge people on this. And I know we can't do it now live on air, but I do an exercise, and I urge anyone who's listening to try this. I want you to write down in one sentence, multitasking is worse than a lie. So you write that down in one sentence, and then underneath it, you write 1, 2, 3, 4, and you put a number underneath each letter. Yep. And I think there's about 26 or 27. And what you do is we set a timer and you go, multitasking is worse than a lie, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you've got 2 separate tasks. On average, it takes people between 15 seconds and 37 seconds to do that. All right. Next we turn the page over and we say, right, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same task, but we're going to multitask. We're going to do multitasking is worse than a lie, and we're going to do the numbers, but we're going to do M1, U2, and you're going to cognitive switch from both of them. The majority of people simply can't do it. It is error bound. It takes so much energy and focus. It is impossible. And we live in a world where, all of this, I call it toxic leadership, this hustle, this grind, and how we can multitask. Because when you're cognitive switching, it takes you on average 21 minutes to be able to come back to where you was in that state of focus. And I think in the world that we're living in, we start talking about dependability and attention to detail. How often do you actually turn off your devices and lock yourself into deep learning mode? And I look at it with the Andy's Man Club. We've got suicides raising and depression raising, and it's in it a coincidence that we've got these things in our devices going ping, ring, ding. Watches, I'm back wearing an analog watch, right? I don't want things pinging, ringing, and dinging me. And then you start looking at number 8, empathy and active listening. Number 9, leadership and social influence. And number 10, quality control. So what really strikes me, in a digital world, human skills have never been more needed because I believe we've lost them. You look at it with parenting, social skills. We've got a huge, huge problem of how we figure this out. And these are dying skills that we've got. And where I get excited, because I'm an optimist, is I believe AI is going to get rid of tasks that it can do better, far better than us. And I do believe, James, and there's an interesting one for you. We've just sold one of our largest contracts. And for our customer journey, we used AI avatars of me and other members of our team for our onboarding. We're really straight that it's a digital version of us. But what I found striking throughout that was, throughout that journey, it was able to give me data. The now client was interacting with that in hours that I would never normally have been available because I'd been spending time with my family. And all of a sudden, when I was able to build a solution for that client, I was able to be hyper focused. So it's got a place to save us time, and I think we're now stepping into that world of new value creation. No different to like when the Ford Model T car was introduced. All of a sudden, there was no horses in London anymore, and everyone said, "Oh, that's blacksmiths are going to be out of work." But all of a sudden, our state of living increased. There used to be thousands and thousands of dead horses on the street. Did we lose the equestrian industry? No, it just shifted. It went to a leisure industry, right? So as humans, we're massively resilient and we'll figure this out. I just think everybody is scared.
Yeah, that's what we see. People don't like change.
Yeah.
And especially if they change something that they like to do. Most of the people like their jobs. So, and if it changes, your job changes. So that's scary. Not what you want.
No, no. And I think when you look back at history, because history leaves clues, doesn't it? Is we've moved from transforming materials, so the Stone Ages, the bronze tools, iron tools, all the rest of it, and then you go from we're transforming energy, the water wheel, steam power, electricity, combustion engine, and we're only just now starting to transform data and information. But I think what's really striking, I think human language has only been around 5,000 years, and large language models, in comparison, about this, but we actually don't know exactly what they can do for us because we're at the tip of the iceberg. So any AI expert out there who says they're an AI expert, they don't really know exactly how it's going to help us because we're just on the curve of this new wave, aren't we?
We're on the brink of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of, I was at a talk by a previous guest we've had on, Brian Madden. He's so we both work in end user computing. Brian was an expert and he went into AI. And one of the things he was basically saying was around that this is kind of where you start playing around with it and, looking at what, I suppose to be a little bit more focused, what I find is a lot of people can get very overwhelmed and think they've missed the boat and that kind of thing. And I think, you need to break it down. And we did this in a previous episode as well. You need to break it down, see where you can find the efficiencies for yourself with AI, and then scale up to, your department. But you need to just start playing around with it and just, you don't focus on the hype. There is so much hype around this. It's off the charts. Our previous episode is all around AI agents versus automation and, what we actually have at the moment. They're not actually proper AI agents. And there's a lot of stuff that you need to debunk and break down at the moment. And every company says they have an AI agent when they actually have some automation, as we all know. So, but my point is, I suppose, that break it down to its simple. It's like, how can AI help me? And ask it. Just take your role and actually talk to the AI and say, here's my role. How can I make, what can I do to implement AI into these tasks? And just start off really simply like that. Because I think, as I said, there's just that's a starting point for anyone, and then you can see its strengths and its weaknesses.
No, I agree, and I think the way we come at it from it is you need to identify valuable problems you're going to solve. Then you need to explore innovative ways, but you need to define your approach. And I think when we talk about defining your approach, it's always been a data strategy for us. What we talk about, it's always been a data strategy. And from a technical point of view, that data strategy has got to have a disaster recovery plan in place to get you back up and running, right? And ultimately, you want to do sort of three things, don't you, with your your data strategy? And I think people miss this out completely because number one, with your data, you got to secure it. Number one, you got to secure it, and people just don't want to pay to secure data or pay to the devices, which unfortunately people don't talk about getting hacked, right? And those guys will understand that when it goes wrong, it goes very, very wrong. And I think what's really interesting at the moment, it used to be where you would spread your risk across different systems and different networks, whereas what we're actually now recommending is we want all that data in one place, don't we? So that starts becoming, one big attack vector then, doesn't it? For some of it. But then let's just not go down the rabbit hole of security, but let's just say you are secure. In the UK, we recommend Cyber Essentials Plus certification. That means that not only do you understand what good looks like, but then you get basically hacked to show what it goes like. And I think with our clients, we do cyber risk assessments, and the reason why we do it is it's a bit like a fire alarm test, because when it goes wrong, and it will go wrong, a bit like Ghostbusters, who are you going to call and who's going to do what? Because most people don't know what's going to happen. So let's park that. Secondly, let's just imagine we've got our data, we are secure. Then we've got to start making that data accessible before we can make it intelligent. And just pick up on your point, James, is most people don't even understand what a large language model is, right? They don't understand how it works, or an LLM works, or generative AI. And it's so simple, but we miss it. And I think, let's look at the word twinkle, twinkle, little star, right? I think it's 4 words, got 29 characters, and I think off the top of my head it's about 8 tokens, right? Most people don't even know what a token is, right? But all the AI is doing is just using probability of what that next word's going to be. Is it going to be little star? Is it going to be, and it's just using a probability or a number to get that. But then if you start plugging that in and start saying, well, hold on a minute, what is a large language model, and what data can these chatbots use? And all of a sudden, if you go look at, and I sort of teach on this, is 1 byte of data is like 1 character in a book in it. And then you go 1 megabyte is 1 page, 1 book is 1 gigabyte, 1 bookshelf is a terabyte, 1 library is a petabyte, and you can go like that, right? And I think just by having your own database of actual knowledge that you need that is relevant to your job task, think of standard operating procedures, just standard stuff, the way you do things. Having some of these off-the-shelf agents just plugged into your own data set, it can transform your workflow like never before. But most people can't be bothered to document processes. Most people can't be bothered to do the work. They just want to click a button and think it's going to do it for them, because we talk about being augmented, but haven't we been augmented since we first put pen to slate or pen to paper?
Yeah.
Think of the full education system. You'd read a book, you get reference, wouldn't you? And augmented intelligence was reading a book and being referenced. That's all it was. We plug software into it and machine learning, and all of a sudden we've got super intelligence, haven't we? It's nothing new. It's just a different process of us accessing that intelligence and that knowledge. And I think for me, people have to understand that AI will, you will be replaced by AI. But you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by someone using AI. So you talked about, Microsoft and the engineers. We're finding AI is really good at writing code now, aren't we? And checking code in certain areas. But it just needs some good people above it still directing it. And it's a bit like we all travel by aeroplane, don't we? For absolute centuries now, aeroplanes have been taking off and landing themselves, haven't they? But it's been done with automation. Nothing fancy. It can do that. But we still want a pilot. So if that goes wrong, checking in, don't we? We still need some human intervention in there. But there's certain elements, and you're seeing AI being used in fighter jets now. And this is where it gets quite interesting. We're now at a point though with fighter jets where humans can't sustain the G-forces that a computer can. So why would you have a pilot in an airplane if he can't substance the G-force? But he don't need to be in the airplane because he can dial in like we are now, can't he? Which scares the life out of me too. But ultimately, that's where we're going, aren't we?
So they already do drone attacks. Long-distance drone attacks.
Is remote. Yeah, they're they'd be somewhere in the US and the drone is somewhere in the Middle East or something.
Have you not seen the fighter jets though, where they've been doing the tests where?
No, I wasn't aware of that one.
So they've been doing fighter jets where they've got the best pilots versus the same aircraft, but no pilots in it. And so far, it's pilots nil, AI win. And it's purely because
I don't like that.
Yeah, but when you break it,
that's not that doesn't sound like something that's good.
but it brings a bigger debate though, James, doesn't it? Is a fighter jet good?
No.
Is a bomb good? Is a gun good?
No.
So that's not an AI problem.
No. I get that. I suppose it's the loss of control that concerns me. So I suppose it's making sure that the guardrails are in place for these things, and I suppose this is where AI agents fascinate me and scare the living daylights out of me at the same time.
Me too.
Yeah, because this autonomous thing can go and do what it wants, but obviously you can put guardrails around it, but some people are not going to do that, and that's when things are going to get crazy. And that's where I'm at with agents. I go, oh yeah, it wouldn't be great if I had an agent I could go off and do my expenses for me, but to do that has access to everything on my computer, have interactions with every applications. And so it's not a simple process, but once it has that has access to pretty much everything in my life. It has access to my money. It has all of that's that's Pandora's box, in my opinion, and that's where I start getting a little bit shaky with this stuff, and where there's kind of, you know, self-determination by the AI. That's where I get a little bit.
James, what car do you drive?
Kia Sportage.
So, going with itself?
X-Plane G9, it drives itself.
Drive itself, right?
It can
Okay.
drive itself.
So, and that's where I'm leading with that, right? So I drive a Tesla, autonomous, right? And I've had one since they come out, and you change the models. And what struck me on the journey is where we live in Hull. It's on the coast, and we used to have like a holiday home for a period of time when the kids was little. Very remote roads, and I used to just love getting my autopilot to drive down these roads. And what I've seen over the last sort of 10 years since I've been driving on these is the autopilot just getting better and better and better. And there's certain roads it can't drive, certain ones it can. To now, on my journeys, it just sit and forget, and you get to places relaxed. And what really struck me, my wife would never drive on the motorway, never drive on the highways, right? My wife has a Tesla too, right? She now drives all over the place because she feels more safe. And this is my wife, is very nervous in most things, right? But she will drive on a motorway all over the country now because she feels more safe, because the car has got better reactions than what she has, right? So we're seeing it more mainstream. So this technology, none of it's new. That's machine learning, that's AI, it's autonomous. I think what it is now is we're now looking at a mirror where we've got to be radically digitally transparent if we want to really use this technology. Some of us don't like that because we'll lose control, and I get that. And I think we are moving to an area where governance and technology, it's just happening so fast. 'Cause I lecture at some of the universities, Hull University. We've got a Centre of Excellence for AI. I'm a fellow there and an entrepreneur in residence, right? And what's madness is the academics are amazing, and they've got amazing brains and can do things far more intelligent than I can, right? But the difference why I sometimes push the boundaries there, because I own my own company, I have access to the best tools I want because I can play with them, I can iterate, I can, like we mentioned earlier, play. But from budget restrictions, they don't have access sometimes to the tools I have access to. So all of a sudden, I think the conversation needs to be more around digital poverty, because, why should the big conglomerates and the big Fortune 500 companies have all this power and all this tech? What if you haven't got access to tech like we're fortunate and so blessed to be able to have? We've got, all of a sudden, you're moving into a monopoly in a digital poverty. I think that's something that needs to be spoke about more. Because big tech, we're limited. I'm from the UK. Can I buy AI from the UK? Can I buy any UK AI systems? I'm very limited,
Yeah, we're similar. Obviously, Mistral, I think, it would be the main one that's and I suppose, given the current geopolitical climate, do I really want to be using I'm not making any comment about the politics, but I'm just thinking of, in terms of where I live and that kind of thing.
But you're talking, there's a really interesting one. So forget about it being about AI. If you just think of, now we've left Europe and, under GDPR, and, data sovereignty for the UK. There's a lot of organisations in the UK that have got data sovereignty. So one of that is, where's your data hosted, right, and stored? So it has to be in the UK. But what a lot of companies miss is they'll go look at the policies, and we flag this quite often, is, the data will be hosted and be sat in the UK. But if you're using Microsoft or Google, for example, which most people, that's where your main line of business applications are, is that fair to say?
Yep.
Safe to say. Yeah.
Your metadata could be somewhere else.
Yeah, but even though your data, you can stipulate if it's in the UK, under a data sovereignty, and you're thinking from a data sovereignty, is both them companies have what you call follow the sun support. So you've got support all across the globe. That data can be accessed not in the UK. So if we start talking about geopolitics and actual true data sovereignty, we have got a huge problem, obviously, in the UK, because we don't have any companies the size of the monopolies that we have out there in terms of your Microsofts, your Googles, where we can have access to that tech. So I do think that does cause a problem for our in our public services and national health. I think it is a huge challenge.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. We're seeing the same. I saw like the Irish government where they're talking about now implementing AI, but it's a very limited focus. It states that, you know, we'll do it for efficiency, but anywhere where we need to make a decision or anything, that there has to be human interaction. We're not going to, like, you know, if someone's being mean tested for whether they get social welfare or something like that, there still has to be a human element in that assessment process.
I get that, and I think that's, we need to start opening them conversations up wider, because I don't think people actually truly understand the impacts, because these agentic agents that people are talking about, I mean, currently we're just at the sort of phase of retrieval, aren't they? You know, it's just an interface that can provide humans with you know, some information to make decisions. Because I think when you distill it down, and I'm interested, what do you two both believe a human's role is in business nowadays? And what would you say if you had to distill it to one thing? What do you think it is? Because I've got an opinion on this.
Ooh, what is the human's role?
So what is a human's role?
I can't distill it to one. I would say decision making and oversight when it comes to agents. Yeah, control. Yeah.
So you nailed it for me in the first one, decision making, right? A human's job, I think, in the modern world, it's always been that since when we first used to shake trees to try and look for food, is to solve problems, right? Decision making. And I think where we are losing focus, humans have to and must be at the source of every decision we make within our businesses. That's why, you know, if I'm a 50% owner or director, I've got a responsibility to do that. You guys have. So that's one of the challenges. Next, you know, when we move from simple tasks like retrieval, we can start talking about tasks, can't we? Managing tasks. So, you know, managing completing tasks and acting on our behalf. And you might go, well, miles away from that. Let's go look at a tool like Perplexity. You've both heard of Perplexity. I'm sure you've used it. It's just an aggregator. To the untrained person, what they don't know is it's an aggregator using loads of models. If you listen to this podcast, go buy a license of Perplexity. You get access to multiple models for a very cheap price. It's astounding. And what that helps you do is, it's a bit like a Google. It's actually kicking Google's backside at the moment, isn't it? Because all of a sudden you can do a search and it'll do multiple tasks and it'll reference all your work for you to build a reference or an argument. I find it fascinating when I go into the academic space. When I'm going to go speak to an expert, I will use Perplexity to help me get a quick understanding, help me understand where I'm going, sling it into Notebook LMM so I can listen to it on the go. There's a whole way we can learn, right? But that is a task retrieval agent where, again, with a little bit of automation using something like make.com or whatever, you can have Perplexity go do some research, dump it into a Notebook LLM, launch a podcast, publish it onto your app. So all of a sudden you can be automating simple tasks like that and different areas. But then we're starting to move into the world which people are saying we're there, but we're not there yet, are we? Is autonomous, so making decisions and executing complex workflows. But I think where people are missold, in my opinion, and I'd be interested to know from your side, is we're not really taught around machine learning and how that technology works and what the difference between automation, machine learning, and AI truly is. Because everyone's just obsessed with that word AI, aren't they? And what would you say on that, James?
Yeah, go on, Gerjon.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I had a discussion with the customer this week also that they just want AI and they don't know about all the different stuff. So there's a lot of education that also has to be done by us to help everyone understand the different technology parts that are needed to use AI in the correct way. Let's start with that. AI is not a goal. It's just another tool in your toolbox, but you need to have other tools in place to get the most out of it.
Yeah. And that's it in that sentence there, and it's another tool in the toolbox, isn't it? And I think, but James, how do we educate people to see it like that though? When you've got all this,
well, things like this, the podcast. That's the whole reason we started this podcast. Is we decided that we, as I said, we both work in end user computing. we had an interest in AI. We didn't know a huge amount about it. We were at an event. We had done an AI presentation. We'd had a couple of beers, and we said, will we do a podcast? And we are completely outside our comfort zone with talking about most of this stuff. We are not an expert in any shape or form. We are both IT professionals in end user computing, have been for about the past 20 years. So we understand technology, but AI was foreign to us, and we've just either talked to other people within our community or reached out to people like yourselves and just we want to learn more, and then we via the podcast we want to share that information and hope people learn from it. Where Gerjon was saying, like, our last episode was all about AI agents and automation, and he had some comments from people that said, you know, this is really useful. I really like the approach. So it seems like we are making an impact, which is the whole point of what we're doing this for.
No, I love it. And we used to run a podcast. We've paused it at the minute. We started about 7 years ago, and it was just all around sharing what you mentioned, interesting stories. But we've just been going through a bit of a pivot in the business where we've started to really specialise in some of the Microsoft large language models and the Copilot integrations into Microsoft's graph data and some custom areas around that. So we're just going through a little bit of not a rebrand, but just getting our story and our message and our model, because we've been going on for 22 years now, I think it is. So we're just pausing, getting all our stuff ready. But the phone has not stopped at the minute. We've got so much work, which is amazing. But I think to maybe add some value to your listeners, I think if they could understand machine learning models, and it's not as complicated as they would have us think. And if you think about it, I don't know if you guys, for me, I think there's only really 6 machine learning models, and for me, you've got regression and regression. A regression large language model, machine learning model is it'll ask questions around how much or how many. So that can be used to categorize data like that. You've then got classification, so which class does this thing belong into? You've then got clustering, are the different groups and different data sets that needs to be in, to anomaly detection. So us guys are from IT, cybersecurity tools and your basic, like, you know, antiviruses back in the day, to your advanced endpoint protection. It's using anomaly detection. Is this weird? You know, if you're using Excel, should Excel be connecting to James's Excel in Bucharest and sending all of my data in the back of it? That's a bit weird, isn't it? That's anomaly, right? And that's outside of the parameters of an antivirus. It's not a virus. It's actually lateral movement within your database. And then all of a sudden, your next traditional machine learning model is something like recommendation. So, which is the best option I can choose? And then only then do we get into large language model, which is and let's keep a large language model really simple. Which next word sounds the best? That's all it is. That's all it's doing. That is all it is doing, right? The true power comes when you can link the machine learning models, like I've just mentioned, regression, classification, clustering, anomaly detection, recommendation, with a large language model to really drive business engineering of your processes in new and unique ways. And that's where you've got different platforms. And for me, where I recommend businesses starting, make a decision whether you're going to run Microsoft or Google. Just stick your data in one of them two, the industry best, and go play with their own versions. You've got Gemini, you've got Copilot, and you've got automation that builds into them different models. And that's where I would really stick and go play.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
I think that's a good place to start, and that's a good place to finish up as well. So, you know, that I agree with what you're saying for businesses anyway. I think, you know, for personal stuff and that, you know, OpenAI and all those kind of things are fine. But for businesses who are used to Microsoft products, using Microsoft or utilizing Google makes sense for industry.
I'll say one caveat before you go as well. Anyone who is using ChatGPT, go pay for a license, go in and turn off that it's going to train on your data. Make sure you set it up, because anything that is free, you are the product, and so many businesses and people are giving away their intellectual property, which is just, it blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind.
There you go. Don't allow it to train on your data, which that makes sense, and we've said that numerous times in this podcast. Don't be uploading confidential data up there or anything like that, because you're violating all sorts of rules and stuff like that. So yeah, that Leon, that has been absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate you coming on. It's been a really good discussion. Obviously, we started off on the skills, and then we kind of went off as you do with a conversation, which is what this is. So that is what it is to be human. And I think in the age of AI, this is a really important thing. So we all need to still be humans. So with that, I'd like to say thanks to Leon. Thanks to Gerjon as always. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks very much.
Thanks all for listening. Bye-bye.